for it right now.
So yeah, to call this blue-white control is pretty accurate. It's kind of blue-white flash kind of has evolved into this. It's much more blue-white control. No thought scours in this list. No, pikes in this list. So Harry leads with the plains. Cullen Oliff, his opponent with Jund, has all 3 colors online on turn 2 and has a Scavenging Ooze.
Again, people making deck building changes because of that card existing. As you mentioned, no Snapcaster Mages.
Yeah.
There are 4 copies of Think Twice here, but Ooze isn't really all that great against Think Twice. So
right.
You're still able to play that card, but you're not going to see really the Thought Scour packages that we saw many months ago. This here's an Azorius Charm that's going to be cycled here for Corvese.
Takes 2 from the Ooze. Now on his 3rd turn, definitely has a land drop. I can see a plains, but instead he has a Ghost Quarter, original Ravnica Ghost Quarter, or what is it, Dissension, I believe.
Gotta remember as well here, this blue-white deck picked up in prominence because of Burning Earth being in existence. Not a card that Jund plays, of course, but because Burning Earth picked up in popularity like wildfire to the point where people were playing Burning Earth's main deck in big red-esque strategies, people had to make changes to their blue-based control decks. As a result, you see blue-white popping up more than Esper or blue-white-red, and we saw players have success with this. The 2 that stand out again are Matt Nass and Jacob Wilson at Grand Prix Calgary, Wilson being a runner-up at that tournament, losing to Alexander Hayne. So, really, or excuse me, a top 4 of that tournament, but Hayne does win the tournament.
Right.
But yes, this is a really, this deck is for real. This is a real thing that people can be doing. And, it's something that's going to probably pick up a little bit over the next month while we still are pre-Theros as probably the control deck, or at least the blue deck to be playing.
Yeah. So, Scavenging Ooze has gotten in another pair of times, knocking Harry down to 14, but otherwise it's just been land drops for both players. Now Harry, on his 5th turn, has his 5th land drop. I can still see that plains in hand, unhinged plains. Has a Mutavault as well. He's going to go ahead and play that, threatening to trade with that Scavenging Ooze. Cullen has his 6th land drop and is going to follow that up with Olivia Voldaren. She's quite the all-star, not necessarily in this matchup as much as she is in many other matchups, but she's still a threat that Harry will want to deal with.
Yeah, no. Olivia is no joke, my friends. No joke whatsoever.
Looks like she resolves, and Harry, Cullen passes the turn. Harry draws an Azorius Charm for his card for the turn.
See if he has Supreme Verdict to maybe fire off here. The issue here, right, is like if Harry does fire a Supreme Verdict, he's opening himself to get absolutely ambushed by a Rakdos' Return or a Primal Hunter or anything like that. So Oliff has done a nice job of putting pressure on Corvese this game by just playing a couple of threats and then forcing him to answer those. The problem for Corvese is that most of his threats force him to tap a lot of his mana. See him cycle an Azorius Charm in his main phase. And so if he does play a spell in his main phase, like a Supreme Verdict or even a Detention Sphere, he risks the chance of getting just lit up by a game-winning Rakdos' Return.
Drew into a Syncopate off of that Azorius Charm.
This doesn't look good. This looks like he might be Ghost Quartering himself.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's going to Ghost Quarter himself to turn a plains into an island.
Smells like a Detention Sphere, maybe. Not quite sure.
Yeah, didn't get a great look at his hand.
Could also be like playing Supreme Verdict, too.
Yeah, whatever it was, he feels the need to have double blue at some point in the future. But there's a Supreme Verdict you mentioned. So he plays that plains as his land for the turn after Ghost Quartering himself to get an island. Follows that with a Supreme Verdict. The board is clear, and we're going to see a Thrag Tusk from Cullen.
So as far as that was finger crossing turn for Harry.
Sure,
hoping something bad doesn't happen. And if Thrag Tusk is the worst thing that happens, you're pretty happy, honestly, because the shields are down for Rakdos' Return, for Garrick or any other Planeswalker type card. For it to, funny saying this, to just be a Thrag Tusk,
right,
is a good thing.
I mean, but for a blue-white control deck, Thrag Tusk is not as scary because the 5 life you almost don't care. You're not usually racing, and the body. I mean, you have ways to deal with creatures. You're a control deck.
Well, that draw certainly matters, though, because Oliff drew a Kessig Wolf run for the turn and plays that for his lands. So right now the activation can be for 5 if he wants it to be, but he's not going to.
So just the basic standard 5 damage from a Thragtusk, and Harry, at end of turn, casts that Sphinx's Revelation for 3.
No way to be punished for doing that right now for Corvese. So there's the baby revelation that's going to hopefully be chaining into bigger revelations for Corvese. You see Oliff's hand as well. He has 3 Bonfire of the damage in his hand, so he's drawn. In this matchup, Bonfire is basically a blank card. Quite bad in this particular matchup. So I fully expect Oliff to board them out in the sideboarded games and, streamline his deck to be a control-destroying machine. Maybe that's part of the reason that Corvese tapped out on his turn with the Supreme Verdict, the Ghost Quarter turn, thinking, if he's got removal spells or Bonfire in his hands, then I might be able to make it out of this turn alive, as long as he doesn't have Rakdos' Return or Garruk, which he didn't, and he actually had to draw the Thragtusk. So it's doing okay.
What does Cullen have as far as his? I was going to say how many Rakdos' Return does he have in main deck, and it's 2.
Yeah.
In the board, 1 additional copy. So, just curious to see what he had there.
You see Harry taking a look at Attention Sphere in his hand, among other cards. He's got a lot of cards in his hand. Now he just has to figure out the best way to take care of this Thragtusk, both halves of it, of course. And then once he's done taking care of that, then he can kind of move the game along a little bit here. He still wants to leave counter magic in case Rakdos' Return or a Garruk Primal Hunter does show up. But he just wants to navigate this game in such a way that he doesn't get blown out by anything, because you can figure out what Jund has or what cards you need to play around, because there's only a small subset of cards you need to play around game 1 that are the real backbreakers.
Yeah. So he's going to go ahead and Detention Sphere that Thragtusk. Still going to leave behind a Beast, but that's pretty much a gain 2 life kind of trade there for every time that Thragtusk would have attacked.
Okay, so Garruk is the card that Oliff just drew to go along with those 3 Bonfire of the Damned.
We know Harry has a Syncopate. Syncopate for 3 is not enough, it doesn't look like, if does Cullen have a land drop, but Beast gets in for 3.
No Wolf.
He doesn't even need the land drop.
So there's a Garruk.
He's going to be able to have 3 mana available, so the Syncopate is not enough.
Shows Aetherling. Okay, so he has Dissipate. I think he almost showed Cullen Aetherling. I think he held off just enough.
Yeah. I've done that before. You miss what card you're grabbing and you think it's the top card.
Whoops. A Verdict now for Corvese. So he's traded with the first half of the Thragtusk with the Attention Sphere. He can trade for the second half with Supreme Verdict. In a perfect world, he does it with Azorius Charm, because there's a Moorland Haunt. But I think I'd be okay verdicting, just trading this Verdict 1 for 1. Because then if he does that, then he's able to fully turn the corner if Oliff doesn't do anything on his next turn.
Yeah, he's got enough to Revelation for 5 here if he has another Revelation, but I haven't seen one in hand. I think he's got double Hallowed Fountain, Aetherling, Syncopate, Verdict, and I'm not quite sure what else. Aetherling, Syncopate, Verdict.
Difficult decision.
He doesn't have double Verdict now, he just has 1.
No, I don't. Yeah, I think he has.
Oh, he might have a
one.
Jace.
Yeah, it's Jace Architect with Fog.
And I think
Separate the
we're
names.
all going to see the Jace here.
You just see exactly how careful, as there's the Jace that Corvese has to be. He's going to bring it down, turn over 3 cards, think twice in 2 lands. You see how careful that Corvese has to be, because again, he doesn't want to open himself up to just getting Rakdos Return and Fireball right out of this game.
Right.
So if the big Rakdos Return resolves, it's just an absolute nightmare.
So the 3 cards are Think Twice, Plains, and Island, and the split is Think Twice versus Plains and Island. Harry goes with the Think Twice, wants to dig a little deeper rather than have a couple of extra lands here, which makes sense considering how many lands he has in play, and we know, at least I'm pretty sure he's got double Hallowed Fountain still in hand.
Yep.
Does not want a handful of lands. In fact, he'd probably have to discard still on that turn, I believe, if he had kept, well, maybe not. But we're going to see a Bonfire. Cullen's going to put the kibosh on that Jace here, theoretically.
I try to. The tough part here is that if Cullen, I believe, if he would have just attacked with the Beast token and then put everything on the Wolf run, I think things work out great for him. Let me see what Harry has in his hand. Okay, he's going to cast Think Twice first.
Draws
There's a
Plains. Harry, who ghost courted himself earlier in the game, is now flooding out. 3 lands in hand. 9 on board or 8 on board? 8 on board.
So Bonfire takes care of the Planeswalker. Beastoke comes in for 3, puts Corvese down to 6. Again, he does have those 2 Hall Fountains that you mentioned. He does have planes as well. He's going to play the planes. We'll see what he wants to do to follow up with.
He's got a revelation,
Yep.
so that'll be a big revelation if he gets a chance to cast it here, which he should. He's going to go ahead and verdict that back half of the Thragtusk.
And I like verdicting here. I'm still a fan of that play. Just trading 1 for 1, trading your Wrath 1 for 1 here. Rootbound Crag's a draw there for Oliff. You know, just get that off the board. And now, if Oliff doesn't play a creature this turn, then Corvese can just finish turning the corner now with the big revelation and having no fear of tapping out to do so.
And looks like Cullen's going to go ahead and Bonfire for everything. He's going to get syncopated, very likely.
Well, this is a Bonfire for 4. We'll see if Harry wants to counter this or not. Because I think he could be very comfortable just going down to 2.
Yeah? Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's a touch risky.
Yeah, he's got as far as I know, he's got no other counter spells in hand. He's used a Dissipate already. As far as how many counter spells he plays, it's 3 Syncopate, 1 Dissipate. That was his only Dissipate. He's going to go ahead and Syncopate that. So he's down 2 of his 4 main deck counter spells.
Again, I think that is worth syncopating.
Yeah.
I really do.
But you could also see him going the other way.
Yeah. You can also see the argument of just, all right, I'll go down to 2, Revelation for 6 or 7 or whatever, gain a bunch of life back, and then just move on from that. Move on that way.
So, Hallowed Fountain into play tapped for Harry, still at 6. Cullen at 25, of course, not as relevant in this particular matchup. Cullen plays a land and passes back.
And that's the perfect situation for Corvese, because now he can resolve the second Revelation. This is the
6
bigger.
mana,
yeah, so we go from big, bigger to biggest,
Yeah.
and then there's no coming back. So he's in phase 2 of the Revelation game, drawing a bunch of cards, and we already know he has the Aetherling in his hand, so he has the way to win the game in this hand, too.
And draws for the turn, finds an Augur of Bolas, number 1 of 4 in his deck. Plays an island. I believe he has 11 lands in play now.
Yeah. I just wonder how much slower Harry wants to play this game. He's going to Augur first to take a look and maybe find a spell. And the reason I mention that is another Revelation, so biggest.
Yeah.
It's because I kind of want to, if I'm him, I just want to slam Aetherling and just try to get the game over with.
Right, you want to deny your opponent's turns.
Yeah.
That said, it's your 1 Aetherling, your 1 main primary win condition. So you want to be careful with it.
Okay, so
this is one way to do it.
That's awesome. So he shows him double Restoration, Angel and Aetherling, and he says, "Well, I'm gonna win eventually." And Cullen goes, "All right, yeah, that's fine. You win. Let's move on."
Is that how you do it? You just like, you have no creatures. I'm at 12. You saw I have another Revelation. Oh, here's 3 guys. That's how these cards work.
Yeah, I think what Harry's just going to do at the end of Oliff's turn is just go Restoration Angel, Restoration Angel, blink both Augurs, hopefully draw 2 cards, and then just start attacking that way and close the game out.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And then, of course, follow up with Aetherling.
Yeah, and at some point he can cast Aetherling and just try to get the game over with. Either way, Corvese up a game.
Yeah, I like it. Gotta say. Go Blue Decks.
Well, we'll see what Oliff can do to turn this around for him, because the one thing I like about Jund is that, it hedges game 1 against all the decks in the format, and then it can sideboard in such a way to board out the bad cards and board in the good ones in the appropriate matchup. So, the bad cards that you can board out against a control deck like Corvese's are cards like Tragic Slip, Museum Mortars, Bonfire the Damned, Doomblade Putrefy, Dreadbore, stuff like that are easy cards to sideboard out. Luckily for him, he can sideboard in some real haymakers and 2 copies of Acidic Slime, 2 Underworld Connections, 2 Liliana of the Veil, 2 Duress, and then he's got 2 Golgari Charms and a Rakdos Return. So we're looking at 11 cards he can potentially sideboard in. The other 4 cards in his sideboard for Oliff are 2 Barter and Blood and 2 Pillar of Flame. Not going to come in here, but those other 11 cards are quite good to bring in, and if you do a count of 4 Bonfire the Damned, 2 Tragic Slip is 6, Museum Orders is 7, Double Putrefy is 9, Doomblade is 10, Dreadbore is 11. It's a pretty clean swap.
Yeah.
Now, you can certainly make an argument for leaving in Putrefy and Doomblade to take care of Restoration Angel and or Augur Bolas. I can certainly see that. I think he wants to leave an Abrupt Decay because it can take care of Augur and it can take care of Detention Sphere. But there's a pretty easy 11-11 for swap here that's going to make his deck much better post-sideboard against a control strategy.
And very, very scary.
Yes.
Because that's the thing, Jund seems to have the tools to adjust and become the deck it needs to be.
Yep.
Game 1 is almost a crapshoot. And one, if he draws the half that is good against control, if he had more, of those Rakdos' returns, you saw that shields down a couple times.
Yep.
So on Harry's side, his sideboard, an additional Aetherling, 4 Rock's Faithbender, 2 Celestial Flare, a removal spell that's been picking up from M14, 2 Blind Obedience, 2 Terminus, 1 Dispel, and I believe that's 3 Negate.
That is 3 of those.
So, and that's Jund being such an effective deck, it's very difficult to sideboard against it. It's not like all in on creatures, so you're not like, oh, I need to bring in a bunch of removal, but then it's not all in on spells. You bring in a bunch of removal, you side out your counter spells, you die to Garruk and Rakdos' returns, and you bring in counter spells and side out removal, you're losing to, Huntmaster and Olivia and Thragtusk.
Something that slips through the cracks.
Yeah, so I like bringing in additional protection against the real big haymakers, like you said, the Rakdos' returns, the Garruks. Those are probably the scariest cards, I think. Liliana's pretty scary, but so bringing in those negates are an idea. I'm not sure about
a lot of the cards that Harry's going to be sideboarding, that Cullen's going to be sideboarding in are spells that negate and counter.
Right.
Again, Underworld Connections times 2. Liliana, 2 of those. 2 Duress. Not the best card to negate, but still a spell nonetheless. 2 Golgari Charms, which a lot of the times those are going to try to one-up a Supreme Verdict, so you can actually counter that, and then that additional Rakdos return. So a lot of the cards, and then we mentioned, of course, the Garruks in the main deck and the other Rakdos returns. So a lot of the cards are going to be negatable at your sideboard. So I think he's going to want to bring in all 3 of those. Honestly.
Right. So that's what I'm like. Negate is the first card that I know. Bring in.
Yeah.
After that, it gets hairy. Like, Dispel doesn't have that many targets, right? Dispel is a nice counterspell, but it hits Golgari Charm. And what?
I think that's probably it after sideboard. Can't counter Abrupt Decay. Could potentially counter Putrefys that are left in, or that Doomblade.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think you're going to want to spell here at all.
And then after that, you can bring in some more removal. He can Blind Obedience is more against something like a Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah, more definitely there to beat Kibler's deck.
Right. So not necessarily something you want here. Cullen doesn't care if his guys come in to play tap. They're not blocking. They're not hasty, and they're not usually blocking.
Yep.
So Blind Obedience not so good there. Celestial Flare, reasonable. It's an instant speed removal spell. He could bring those in, and maybe the 1 additional Aetherling. But I'm not even sure about that. The second Aetherling may even be there more for other control.
Yeah, the second Aetherling might be a touch of overkill, but if he is playing against other blue-white decks because his deck is picking up in popularity a little bit, then you're going to want a little bit of help there. I'm not entirely sure he wants it in this matchup. However, it does give him a card that he can just top deck, like if he gets Rakdos return, it gives him a card that he can top deck and turn the game around and potentially steal a game, depending on how things are going. And having that kind of card in your deck is really, really powerful.
Yeah, the blue-white deck's options, are particularly Harry's deck, are not nearly as impressive as the Jund deck's options to kind of switch it up against Harry's deck. So we'll see how the sideboard of the games go.
Yeah, and again, this is how Jund works, in which it hedges against everyone game 1, for lack of a better term. It's got some removal, it's got some Rakdos returns, which are embarrassing against like Kibler's deck, stuff like that, but it's good in the mirror and good against blue decks. So, you don't play 4 of them, you just play a couple of them, and you kind of hedge your slots, and then after sideboard, you're able to just sideboard how you need to against every deck in the format, and take out the bad cards, bring in the good one, streamline your deck to be able to beat a certain type of deck every time. That's what makes this deck so incredibly difficult to beat. It's because it's funny because its game 1 percentage isn't great against everything, but it's awesome against like everything after sideboard. And as you know, you play more sideboarded games than you do game 1s.
Typically.
Most often, yes.
All right, so we're underway. Both players hitting their first couple land drops. Both players look like they have access to all 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Cullen has access to all 3 colors.
Yeah.
Harry just blue-white has his Hallowed Fountain and his island there. Harry up a game, is on the draw, has a second Hallowed Fountain for his turn, passes back to Cullen, and Cullen is going to play the first spell of the game in the form of Huntmaster of the Fells.
Let's see if there's like a Syncopate looming here or not. There's not, so here comes the Wolf token and 2 life. Gotta be pretty happy there if you're Oliff to be able to slide that thing through the cracks here, and so it's gonna force Corvese to actually start having to use his mana instead of just playing draw go all day.
So he's definitely got some lands in hand. He's going to play an island, he's got a Mutavault, he's got a Plains. I believe he may even have a Ghost Quarter. He looks like he's got a Restoration Angel in the front ready to ambush, potentially. But he's going to do it here so that the Huntmaster does not flip. So Restoration Angel main phase. Cullen untaps his 4 lands. He's got an Olivia here. He's going to go ahead and stick that while Harry is tapped out.
Very lucky here again that Cullen didn't have like a Garruk Relentless. Actually, he does have a Garruk Relentless, so...
I'm surprised.
Wow, I'm very surprised he didn't take the opportunity to slide that in.
Cullen apparently valuing the Olivia over the Garruk, although maybe he just is trying to bait Harry into Supreme Verdict here and then
Garruk.
Follow up with Garruk.
Okay.
And we don't know if Harry has Supreme Verdict, but he does play 4 main. He's also got 2 copies of Terminus in the sideboard, not that he'd be playing those main phase this turn with only 5 mana. But those are his sweepers, if he brought them in.
I mean, Oliff, I guess, is happy to be in this position of, you know, now you have to actually move. You have to do something, and whatever you're going to do requires you to tap a lot of mana, and then I can slide my Garruk in on probably a more clear board, which is where I like my Garruk to be.
The other thing, though, Cullen right now unable to attack into that Angel so easily, so Huntmaster did really very little there. So far he hasn't done really any damage to Harry. Harry's going to Sphinx's Revelation for 2, so he does tap out. It's going to allow Cullen to resolve that Garruk, and he still has all those guys. So I did see a Supreme Verdict as one of the cards off of that Revelation.
Yep. Cullen is allowed to do whatever he wants here. So he's going to start by putrefying.
Yeah, putrefy your Angel, swing in for 7 here.
Kind of poor order of operations there from Oliff, because he drew a Rakdos Keyrune for the turn, so he could have played a Keyrune and then putrefied. As a result, he still gets to actually use the mana because he goes attack with everything, shoot my own guy with Olivia. But I think he'd much rather have the Keyrune play because he wants mana.
Right. Especially considering a Verdict is very likely from his opponent, and you have a card that just gets around Verdict.
Yeah.
So,
additionally, it's just another attacker.
Right. So there you see Cullen does get in for 7, and Harry follows up with that Verdict. 2 mana open, and now, presuming Harry has one of those negates or a Syncopate, he can deal with that Garruk that Cullen is itching to play, I'd assume. He's also got a Rakdos to return, so we hope for Harry's sake that he has access to a negate. Taking a look at some of the cards in Cullen's hand, he might just play a Thragtusk.
He could just get a board presence back on the table in the form of Thragtusk because he doesn't want to open himself up to getting his Garruk countered. You know, if he didn't want to resolve it when the shields were down for Harry, that he's gonna. I can't imagine he'd want to do it now when there's access to Syncopate, which he knows there is, and then Negate, which if he's familiar with the format of the deck, he knows exists after sideboard. He's just going to go with the weakest of his cards right now in Olivia.
And Olivia sticks. It was Syncopate proof. We saw Harry does actually have a Syncopate in hand, so Syncopate proof because Cullen had 1 mana available to pay, and Harry could only Syncopate for 1. So Harry plays a land and passes the turn.
I think you're Harry. You're absolutely thrilled to be in this situation because none of the real haymakers have shown up yet, and I think again that may have been a misstep on Oliff's part of passing up on resolving the Garruk when he actually had the opportunity.
Yeah, a couple opportunities actually. So Olivia gets in for 3, knocks Harry to 11. Cullen's going to tap 3 and play that Keyrune. Looks like he's also got a Farseek. He could go ahead and Farseek here, and that's what he's going to do. He's not using that Keyrune mana. Not that it really matters here, but I feel like that's how I always think of those kind of cards, like Everflowing Chalice, Sure. Mind Stone. It's just like I count it in with the mana for the turn and try to maximize it. But so there you see, end of turn, Sphinx's Revelation from Harry. That's Sphinx's Revelation number 2, and that's going to be for 4 cards. Going to put Harry back up to 15 following Cullen Oliff's turn of attack with Olivia, play a Rakdos Keyrune, play a Farseek.
Yeah, so the previous game we saw Revelation for 3 and 6 from bigger, and then we would have seen the biggest eventually in game 1, but wasn't necessary. This game we see a Revelation from 2 for 2, second one for 4, and I don't know if we're going to see a third one or not this game. But, you know, Harry has got extra cards, he's got extra life. He's sitting at 15 right now. Oliff, a little bit bottlenecked on mana right now. You know, not in a terrible way. He's working himself out of it from that Key Rune and from that Farseek. Here comes an Augur Bolus to start Corvese's turn. But this is how Corvese wants things to go after sideboard.
Yeah, Harry has got to be feeling pretty good about his position at this point. So Augur Bolus finds nothing. That Augur Bolus is such a jerk.
Yeah, it just doesn't like to be on SCG Live, that's all.
Must be.
Yeah, that's it. Never has, really.
And that's the play from Harry. Passes back with the lone Augur of Bolus.
Yeah, shields are up. There's a Rootbound Crag there for Oliff. But see, this is the thing. You know, I'm kind of harping on the point of him not playing the Garruk that turn. The reason I like the Garruk, even if the Garruk ends up dying, is that it forces Corvese's hand into doing something he doesn't want to do. It forces him to play the game differently. Mm-hmm. By playing the way that Oliff has over the course of this game, Harry's very comfortable playing the sort of game that Oliff is working his way into. Mm-hmm. But if he plays the Garruk, it forces Corvese to be more proactive instead of being fully reactive and you know, playing with the shields up. And here's the Azorius Charm that's going to put that Olivia back on top. You know, it forces the blue-white to do something it does not want to do, and that's what you want to do when you're playing against it. Is you want to force its hand to, you know, start tapping down on its own turn, start making, you know, questionable attacks, or do what they have to do. They have actually be able to attack into the Garruk. You know, because, you know, of course the Garruk could have just died after maybe 1 or 2 activations. Right. But that just snowballs
that costs
everything
resources,
else.
Right?
Yes.
Not only time, turns, you know, like mana. So Augur declines to block the attacking Key Rune. So Harry goes to 12, and here you see that Garruk.
Yeah, and this is just an easy counterspell here.
Negate.
After he's, you know, once your opponent has revelated for 2 and 4, so they're +6 cards, you have to believe that they have the answer when they have that much mana available too. You don't know, you know, if you're Oliff, you don't know Corvese's exact counterspell suite, but you know he's got Syncopate, you know he's got Dissipate in some numbers, and he's going to have Negate after sideboard, so you can't imagine that Garruk resolving.
So Augur number 2 appears to be about to come down. Harry changes his mind here. Counting his mana. I see 9. Yeah,
I see 9. Unsure if there's any off camera, but it looks like we've got 9 lands in play for Corvese right now. He's going to start off his turn again with just Augur of Bolas. See if this one hits.
This one's definitely hitting, at least a Syncopate. I think there may be an Azorius Charm in there. And a Sphinx's Revelation, or a Sphinx's Revelation.
So that'll be biggest then.
Yeah, Sphinx's Revelation into Harry's hand, I guess to make up for the whiff on the first Augur. Yeah. Says, just give me something spicy.
See if he wants to get in for 1 now. It's just
says, I don't think that 1 matters that much here. Yeah. Kind of rather have. I wonder if he's now gearing up to chump block the Key Rune, but then again, Cullen just going for it. Yeah. All in on Rakdos' return. We know there's a Syncopate. Harry says, I'll tap 2 and Syncopate and be able to flash in a Restoration Angel at the end of your turn if I'd like. Is that what he does here? So there's no attacks. Cullen says go. There's the Restoration Angel. Gonna blink an Augur. Find another Syncopate. Just to replace the one I used on your Haymaker. Yep. And things are looking very good for Harry Corvese at this point. With an actual win condition on board in the form of Restoration Angel, he's going to be able to go on the offensive here. If he'd like. Not only that, I mean, he could go all aggro and activate Mutavault, swinging for 7 here if he wants. Yeah, I mean, he can start closing the window on this game and then just having Syncopate protect himself for a little while. I think he has Aetherling in his hand as well, so he can actually deploy that threat. And then, you know, it puts Oliff in a situation where his Haymakers or his awesome cards that he had sideboard in don't have any relevance anymore. Rakdos' Return no longer has relevance. Underworld Connections, Duress, Liliana Veil, they're no longer relevant. You see Harry showing him. I love Harry.
Yeah, Harry's just
I'll
like,
show you my hand. Yeah, you want to keep playing?
Yeah, he's like, I have the nuts. Like, it's going to be almost impossible for you to win now.
I love it, though. I love that way of, you know, like, Cullen's like, well, let's play it out. There's no reason to save time at this point. It's not like Cullen scoops and says, let's go to game 3. So Harry now forced to show him the win, and Cullen is going to take 5 here from Angel Augur.
Harry's like, I don't want to bore you to death. I don't want to bore you.
Cullen's like, okay, I get it.
All right, if we're gonna cast anything, like, fine, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore.
That's that one that it's kind of like Platinum Angel, except it says you win the game.
Yeah.
In certain situations. So Harry Corvese, without having to even resolve an Aetherling, wins on the back of Aetherling in game 1 and 2. Love it.
So there, you want to see blue decks, we gave you blue decks, all right? We gave you Revelation, we gave you counterspells. I
hope all you other blue mages out there are happy with that. I hope we see Harry make it all the way into the top 8.
Yeah, we'll see if he can keep battling with his blue strategy. I mean, 4-0 now, so that's a pretty good start. Again, the blue-white deck being played at Grand Prix Calgary. Jacob Wilson making the top 8 of that deck. Matt Nass having a good tournament as well. Cedric Phillips, Joey Pasco back in the booth. Starts the Games Open Series here in Baltimore. That sideboarded game, for me, I don't really love the way that Cullen played that game. I've been harping on the Garrett point quite a bit. And, one of the ways that I look at things when I am playing against a control deck with a strategy like Jund or mid-range or what have you, is that when you're playing against a control deck that's fairly heavily reactive, you want to put them in situations that they're uncomfortable with. Right. Because it forces them to do things that their deck really should not be doing. They don't want to get proactive. That's a deck that doesn't really turn the corner very well. You take a look at a different control like blue, white, red. That's a deck that turns the corner really well because of a card like Thunderbolt Hellkite, because they have burn spells, so they have reach, because of War Leadership, stuff like that. So they can kind of shift a little bit. Whereas if you take a look at Esper, they can't shift at all.
Right.
They have Drown Yards and
like
Aetherlings.
You literally just like, I'm only going to be reactive and try to refill my hand, which is not exactly proactive. I mean, I guess it's more proactive than reactive, but essentially you're just trying to deal with the threats across the table until you get to the point where you either like run them out of threats, and the coast is, you've got so much mana that you can tap 6 and still have counterspell mana up to resolve. You play your Aetherling and then you just have counterspells back up, that kind of thing. So, it's entirely reactive, right? Like you said, you can't really turn the corner very quickly.
Yeah. So for me, in that game too, again, I want to resolve the Garruk on turn 5 after playing the Huntmaster instead of playing Liffey Voldaren. And the reason for that is because it's immediately going to put Harry in a situation where he has to react now. And so as a result, because he has to be proactive instead of just continuously being reactive, it's going to put him in an uncomfortable situation. Because now the forefront of his mind is, okay, now I have to do whatever it takes to get that Garruk off the board. Because if I don't, I'm going to lose to it. Right. I'm going to lose to it pumping out Beast, it drawing cards, and heaven forbid it ever gets to the ultimate. I'm going to lose to that effect. So now I have to be proactive in what I'm going to be doing to get that off of the board. Does that mean I have to cast an Attention Sphere on it? Maybe. But if I cast an Attention Sphere on it, then I have less mana available to be fully reactive.
Right.
I can only be semi-reactive, and my options are limited on what my reactions can be.
Right.
So that's the reason I like playing the Garruk that turn, because now what ends up happening over the course of the game, as that game played out, is that when Cullen cast Garruk, it's a complete shift in perspective, because when the shields are down for Harry on that turn, what Harry's thinking is, please God don't have Garruk, please God don't have Rakdos Return, please God don't have something that's very bad for me right now.
Right.
Don't have one of your sideboard cards, or don't have one of your haymakers in the matchup. Now, when you're Cullen and casting Garruk or Rakdos Return, now you're the one saying, please God don't have Negate, please God don't have Syncopate. You don't want to be the person hoping that the other person doesn't have something. You want to be the person that is presenting the threat, and then they're saying, oh God, you actually had it, all right, I guess I'm dead now. Because at the end of the day, the Jund deck in this matchup has to be the aggressive deck. It has to be the one that's presenting the questions, and then the blue-white deck has to be the one that has the answers to the questions that are being asked. But when you're presenting the questions into 7 or 8 mana, now the blue-white deck not only has to have the answer, but they can decide if they want to use the answer.
Yeah.
Whereas if the shields are down, it's just like Harry sitting here playing against a proactive deck, saying, I really hope you don't have the proactive strategies to be able to beat me right now. And so that's part of the reason that, again, maybe we end up seeing that Garruk die in 2 turns, and maybe it only pumps out a Beast, but what it does is it snowballs how the rest of the game's going to go, because, all right, fine, you dealt with my Garruk, well, you had to expend resources to do it, and you had to tap mana on your own turn, so now this back-breaking Rakdos Return is actually going to be good now, where, the turn, like on turn 7 or turn 8, we saw him just cap off a Rakdos Return, it's like, well, we both know, and you guys all know, it's like, that's no good. Like, Cullen probably knows, like, all right, well, this isn't resolving, but I can't cast, like, a Thragtusk, because what does he care about a Thragtusk now? Yeah. He can beat a 5/3, he's at, like, 13 life or something, he doesn't care.
I think that there's something else to be said for diversifying your threats. You've got a Huntmaster on board, right? And he had a Huntmaster before that, Olivia. you can play a creature that is the same kind of threat that you already have, and you know this format has answers that just one answer can deal with multiple guys, or you can play Garrick, and he's going to need 2 different kinds of spells to deal with everything you've got. So he can go spend my turn Detention Sphere Garrick, still take a hit from a Huntmaster, you know, like Huntmaster sticks around, or he can spend a turn dealing with Huntmaster with like a Supreme Verdict or something, and still have Garrick sticking around. You know, you diversify your threats. There aren't really, you know, you have Planar Cleansing, but at that point in the game, that wasn't online.
Sure.
So, you know, something that deals with both planeswalkers and creatures. So you diversify there, and that makes him have to either use 2 spells or leave you with something.
Yeah.
But going with another creature, I mean, you have to assume that Cullen thought that Olivia was more backbreaking than Garrick. I mean, I don't know. When I feel like it's any player that looks across and knows their opponent's playing counterspells and they're tapped out goes, what do I want the most? What do I really want to resolve the most? And for him, he must feel Olivia is that strong, but that doesn't seem like he might not have the experience using Olivia against a blue-white control deck that kind of doesn't care that much about Olivia.
No, it really does.
It's a 3/3 that grows. And you're like, you're not gonna put Aetherling. You put Aetherling there, and it's like you're not gonna steal the Aetherling.
Yeah, it doesn't. At the end of the day, Blue White doesn't really care about Olivia. For all intents and purposes, it's a phantom monster in the matchup. It's just a 3/3 flyer. And again, when your play that turn is to play Olivia Voldaren, when you, as you said, you can resolve anything you want to. Harry's making that loud declaration that, you know, I don't want your Huntmaster to flip, because he's making a loud declaration that he cares about that a lot by revving for 2 on that turn. So now he's saying you can do whatever you want to do. You cast Olivia, and it's like, well, that's fine. I don't really care about that, because Supreme Verdict lines up so nicely for me here, where my turn 6 is perfect, because I get to play Verdict and have 2 mana open to represent a counterspell, if it's Syncopate or if it's Negate, but I get to represent something, and then it forces you to make a decision on what spell you want to cast.
Right.
So, you know, the sequencing of turn 4 to 6 for Oliff, I don't love, and it ends up costing the game much longer down the road. The game played for a couple more turns or what have you, but, you know, after the Verdict resolves, and then, you know, Oliff did whatever he did the following turn, so the game is basically over.
Yeah.
You know, it took a little while when Harry showed him his Aetherling and everything. He said, like, I've got you beat. And he's right, because he does have him beat, because of that poor sequencing in turns 4 through 6, playing Huntmaster, which is fine on 4. I'd rather play Huntmaster than Olivia. And then on 5, when the shields are down, playing Olivia instead of Thragtusk or Garrick. You know, if he plays a Thragtusk there, for example, at least Verdict isn't as bad then. Because it still leaves you with a 3/3, and it still leaves you with pressure, and it leaves you so that Harry actually still has to care about something.
Right.
But by playing Olivia, Verdict clears everything off very, very cleanly, and then you get him to counter magic up, and then if he does play a Thragtusk, Harry can decide if he wants that to resolve or not.
Yeah.
You know, and if he does play a Garrick, we know he's countering that. But, you know, now, again, it's back to Harry being in control of what actually matters to him, and you don't want that to be the situation if you're an aggressive player in this matchup. I hope it's, you know, you play your threat, and they have to hope they have the right answer for what you're presenting. Instead of, I get to make a decision if I want the resolve, that's fine. I don't care about that Thragtusk.
And I think even his play, you know, you go beyond those turns. Okay, he didn't play Garrick, he didn't play Rakdos Return, but he still had them in his hand.
Yep.
And he didn't even seem to try to say, well, maybe I'll try to run him out of counterspells by playing some other threats.
Yep.
And then, you know, resolve it, or some, you know, maybe just try to resolve it rather than just going all in Rakdos Return, all in Garrick.
Yep.
Like, it was just running right into the wall.
Yep.
Like, I guess he's trying to say you have to have it, but
he's not in a position to say you have to have it.
Yeah.
Because if he has creatures on the board, and then these awesome spells, then it's a position where Harry has to have it and deal with what he has.
Exactly.
But now Harry just has to deal with the spells that are coming.
Right.
He doesn't have to worry about his life total at all. He can make decisions on if he actually cares about the spells that you're attempting to resolve. And, you know, he can just say, okay, like, that Garrick is fine. Okay, I'm going to Revelation for 4, untap Detention Sphere. I can beat a 3/3 with anything in my deck. This is super easy. You know, you want to be able to present the questions in such a manner that they actually are very difficult questions to answer. The way that the questions were presented in game number 2 there from Oliff, they were questions that Harry could answer if he wanted to or not. And whenever you're asking a difficult question in Magic, when you're presenting a threat, you want it to be something that they have to answer, like, or they're just going to die to.
Right. That's an old thing, you know, people talk about, you go back to just a couple of years, I'll not go way back, but Baneslayer Angel, right?
Yep.
Dies to Doomblade. But it's like a must-answer threat. Like,
yes.
It's a 5 mana that is going to take over the game unless you have that Doomblade to deal with it. So, you know, that matters. And I think that's what popped into my head as the first must-answer threat.
Yeah, you just have to kill it. I mean,
classic.
you can Jace the Mind Sculptor, kind of the same way.
Right. Well, he's pretty good. I've played a couple Jaces.
And thankfully I have not.
Wow, you were missing out.
I've only I've played it like twice or something. It's just,
It feel good?
The problem is that it's too
icky?
good. No, the problem is that it's too good, and it doesn't make the games challenging. I'd rather win with much more mediocre cards like a Johnny Goldmane or something. That's all.
I see.
I like to challenge myself.
Cedric's
Or I'm just stupid. Whatever, it's fine. Either way, we're going to take a commercial break for you guys. We are going to be back for round number 5.
Yeah, already.
I believe. Okay, man, we're moving kind of fast today. 5 of 10. We'll check in on some other players, see how Todd's doing. Jerry Thompson, Brad Nelson, BBD, CVM, other acronyms, what have you. Yeah,
Walmart,
CBS, HBO, Showtime.
all those guys.
We'll find out about the acronyms as well. We'll also come back and talk about Ferris a little bit after round number 5. So for Joey, I'm Cedric. We'll see you guys in a little bit.
The IQ program is a little bit unique as far as competitive level tournaments you get at a store level. It's a larger event, it's a better opportunity for players to get an experience where they have kind of high stakes competitive level event, but in an environment that they're comfortable with and that they're familiar with.
The program itself is very organized. Star City definitely has a lot of experience in running this kind of thing and in putting it together. They're really responsive and they really want to support the stores that are supporting the program.
And it gives players valuable experience before they go to a more high stakes event like an SCG Open, or if they qualify here at, say, an Elite IQ, actually going to an invitational itself.
I feel like the player response has been very positive. We get a lot of compliments. It's important to us that players come out here and have a really good experience.
Effect, or the best draft effect, I think, in black.
Even with his black-green history of playing the deck, I don't think there's any surprise there. I think that one thing that might be in Brad's mind right now is, does he have Life-Bane Zombie somewhere in his 75?
Right.
Because we haven't seen that yet. Of course, we know that he doesn't, but, does that change the way that Brad's going to sideboard?
So we're underway. Both players lead with an Overgrown Tomb, and Brad's first play of the game is a Voice of Resurgence on turn 2. Here on turn 3, he swings in with the Voice, knocks Michael to 18, and has a Skursdag High Priest as the follow-up, along with a Appetite for Brains.
All right, he's getting his paper ready. You see, Rooks is going to read it. Brad's got his pen at the ready to say, all right, let's take a look. What do you have here, buddy?
Taking notes. So we've got a Sever the Bloodline, a Curse of Death's Hold, a Putrefy, and what is that? Is that a Thragtusk?
Yeah, Thragtusk.
A couple of lands.
Yeah, a couple of lands in Swamp and Woodland Cemetery, and then a Homicidal Seclusion. So he does have 4 lands, and the one that obviously sticks out probably to Brad is, hey, there's a Curse of Death's Hold. That card's pain in the butt for me, or was in Miami.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I care about it now in this game or in this particular matchup anymore because my deck is different. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to take here. Because Seclusion can be really good, Thragtusk can be annoying, Sever can be annoying, and then Curse, depending on how Brad's draw is, how he sideboarded, how that lines up, can be annoying as well.
Yeah, a lot of good targets here for Brad, but a lot of it depends on his game plan for this game. He's going to take Sever. So Sever is exiled.
Yeah, and that's a big one there, of course. As you mentioned, exiled. That's what Appetite for Brains does.
Right.
Makes it go away forever, so no flashback on the Sever. Would be far away from flashing back anyway, but that's not even going to be an option anymore for Rooks. He's going to play a land, and he's going to play Putrefy to take care of the High Priest right away. We've seen him kill High Priest immediately, whenever he's had the option to, so he realizes how good it is against him.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Brad said. You play the High Priest early expecting it to die.
Yeah.
If you really want to get use out of the High Priest, you are more likely to play it later. So I think Brad has some muscle, or at least a different plan than High Priest this game. But he's going to go ahead and play Underworld Connections.
So Brad looks like I don't want to say he's gearing up for the long game, but he's getting ready for an attrition battle.
Yeah.
He knows that Rooks' deck has a lot of removal in it, Mutilates, Putrefy, Abrupt Decays, all that good stuff. He's got an idea of what's in Rooks' hand. He knows that Curse of Death's Hold is it's coming, because if he wanted to take it, he would have. He chose not to. Now, the one thing that's going to be interesting to me to watch how this game's going to play out over the course of these next couple of turns is Brad has all the information of what Rooks has. There are a couple cards that he doesn't know about now because of draw steps, but, he chose Sever the Bloodline. That was his choice to take that card instead of Thragtusk, instead of Curse. So he's making a loud statement, Joey, that I'm not scared of those cards.
Right. So Brad draws a couple of cards, one at the end of Michael's turn, one on his turn using the Underworld Connections, and follows it up with a Desecration Demon after swinging in with the Voice of Resurgence. Michael Rooks at 14 life. Brad at 18, or has he played an untapped shot this game? So just the 18 from the Underworld Connection. So there's Thragtusk for Michael Rooks to get back a chunk of that life total, up to 19.
And, this might be part of the reason that, Nelson did decide to take Sever instead of, Curse or Thragtusk, because when you do have a Desecration Demon, you don't care about Thragtusk, and you don't really care about Curse of Deathsoul, because that thing is so huge, and it's going to change the way that Rooks actually has to play the game. Now, if Rooks does draw another Putrefy, another removal spell, then things work out well for him, but I think Brad knew that, one, I don't really care about, Curse or Thragtusk, and two, he's definitely going to Putrefy my High Priest. That's what's going to happen with Putrefy. Yeah. So, as a result, he took the Sever the Line, which would be the answer for Desecration Demon, and now he can start going to work with a 6/6 flyer.
So Brad here in his pre-combat main phase, presumably.
You see, he's kind of asking himself, do I want to activate the Underworld Connections? How do I want to kind of lay out this turn? He's got a High Priest in his hand as well. He's got a Garrett Relentless there. So you see he's going to go to his attack step, taps the demon and say, this trigger, do you want to activate it for Thragtusk? Rooks says no. Going to come across for 6 and move into his second main.
So Michael down to 13. And now Brad, it looks like he's going to play the High Priest here. He does. And it looks like he's going to make his land drop there, Godless Shrine, pass. So
I kind of like this too, because what this is, again, the Underworld Connections, it's basically representing, hey, I'm more than okay going long and playing an attrition battle with you. He only has one in his sideboard. He did draw it, but as a result, he actually can kind of set up and craft this game the way that he wants to. Appetite giving me information, knowing when he needs to play around, and now he's just saying, you know what, I'm happy to go long because I think my card advantage can actually grind you out and beat you. I think going to a long game, I'm better suited to win because of cards like Desecration Demon and some of the other long game resources he has access to.
So Michael Rooks plays a land with a lone Thragtusk on board as his only non-land permanent. Facing down Brad Nelson's Desecration Demon, Skursdag High Priest, which is still summoning sick, and Voice of Resurgent.
So you see 5 mana being tapped here for Rooks. He did play a Grim Backwoods for the turn for his land drop. I'm wondering what he has this turn. We know he has Homicidal Seclusion in his hand, so it would make his Thragtusk into a 8/4 lifelinker.
Right.
So a very sizable attacker. And
he
looks
does
like that
play
might
the
be,
seclusion here.
might be coming sideways, yep. And so this is going to be an ultimate price.
Yeah, the one ultimate price, I believe the one up in the sideboard. Brad said mostly there to kill Skursdag High Priests.
So now the beast is going to die. He should have a beast token coming in so long as he does remember the trigger from Thragtusk. And that beast token, because again he'll only control one creature because of Homicidal Seclusion, we're looking at a 6/4 that does have lifelink.
So Brad draws a card off of the Underworld Connections at the end of turn and now untaps. He's going to draw another card off of the Connections here. So a lot of Brad's up a lot of cards just off of that Underworld Connections.
I mean, it's a scary feeling. Like when you're facing against a deck that typically should be able to draw cards from Junk Aristocrats, him being able to draw more cards, get deeper into his deck, find those synergies that make this deck so powerful. Again, you see the High Priest in play. It has not died, so that means that, if a Cartel Aristocrat shows up or something else, now we can start pumping out 5/5 demons, and if we remember game 1, Rooks couldn't beat that.
Yeah. So Brad gets in with the Desecration Demon. Michael decides he does not want to sacrifice anything. So Michael goes to 7. Brad follows up with a Garrick.
So we play Pilgrim.
And an Abyss's Pilgrim. Makes a wolf there with the Garrick. So Brad with a ton of dudes on board and opportunity to make some 5/5s. Pretty potentially.
I mean, the problem here for Rooks, right, is that he definitely wants to attack with the Todd Anderson Beast token. That's a 6/4.
Right.
But I think Brad will probably chump block with something, be it Voice of Resurgence, Wolf token, have his Pilgrim, his choice. One of the things he's not going to chump block with is the High Priest.
Right.
And then as a result, Morbid's active. He's got guys to be able to make it. But I think that Rooks is priced into attacking here because he's at 7 and he needs to keep his life total high.
Yeah, he actually needs the life total more than he needs the necessarily needs the 6/4. But Brad doesn't have anything that's going to. There you see the Abyss's Pilgrim get in front of the beast there. So
Okay.
Oh, and a Putrefy in response for the High Priest is going to stop that line of play from happening.
So that's a really good attack there by Rooks. He comes in with the 6/4. Nelson's going to predictably block. He chooses to block with Avacyn's Pilgrim before damage and anything happens. Putrefy takes care of the High Priest, so now there's going to be no Morbid, no 5/5 Demon coming out, and he's actually going to get his life, is Rooks, and then pass the turn back. So actually a pretty good turn, all things considered.
Yeah, very good turn. So right now, life totals, 13 for Michael Rooks, 15 for Brad Nelson. Brad has a Desecration Demon, a Wolf, and a Voice of Resurgence alongside a Garruk Relentless on board. And Desecration Demon trigger at the beginning of combat. Michael says, go ahead, you've got your 6/6. Bring it. And Brad looks like he's going to bring it with everybody. Wolf, Voice of Resurgence, Desecration Demon, all getting in. Michael with a 6/4 lifelinker due to that Homicidal Seclusion is just fine with that. Goes down to 3.
Nelson gonna make a Wolf, make a Doom Traveler, pass the turn back, has some mana available. It looks like he's cardless.
Yeah, Brad does appear to have no cards in his hand, which is a surprise considering the Underworld connection.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of cards on board, though.
So. I'm genuinely surprised that he's cardless. I mean, it looks like he's cardless right now.
Yeah.
If he's not, he only has 1 or 2 cards in his hand. Rooks sitting here again with that 6/4 life-linking Beast token. And again, I think he's in the situation where he's priced into attacking. Does he want to attack Nelson or does he want to attack Garruk? That's his call. But he does have to attack her. He is going to attack Garruk. Immediately, Nelson's going to block and make a Spirit token off of Doom Traveler.
Yes, so Garruk survives the turn. Doom Traveler does not, but a Spirit.
Sign in Blood, a little risky.
Yeah, he is up to 9 life off of that lifelink. Now drops to 7. And he's got a follow-up here. A Thrag Tusk is going to go up to 12.
Okay.
Gaining a lot of life. Looking reasonable for Michael, staying in this game despite Brad's massive card advantage off of that Underworld connections.
And Nelson does have a couple cards in his hand. You see him in his hand right now.
On the side, yeah.
One thing to keep in mind now, too, Joey, is that because he does play a Thraxos, does Rooks, yes, he does go up to 12, but now Seclusion's turned off.
It is,
because he doesn't have a single creature anymore. Now, of course, the kind of unique thing here for Rooks' deck is that he can actually, in a way, control how many creatures he has in play. He could, Abrupt Decay his Todd Anderson token.
Right.
With some sort of sneaky attack, which, just send in with Thraktus. Nothing going on here. And kill his own guy if he needs to.
Right.
So that's something that Nelson needs to be cognizant of, assuming that we get to see Rooks untap and go to another turn.
Right. Brad's still at a healthy 15 with a lot of guys on board. Desecration Demon, a pair of Wolves, Voice of Resurgence, and a Spirit token alongside that Garruk Relentless, just pumping out Wolves.
So we're in Brad's first main phase. He has not activated Underworld Connections yet. He's sitting at 15 life. He's going to Garruk and take care of Thraktusk. So he's just going to fight that and says, all right, get that off the table. And I don't think that Rooks can have a response. Yeah, so that's going to die. Beast token's going to come in. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think he has a backup character, right? Maybe? Okay. So what we see happening here is, so Garruk takes care of the front half. The Beast token comes in. And so now Nelson says, can I attack? Desecration Demon gets tapped. Rooks sacks his Beast, says no. Tragic Slip takes care of the other Beast token. And then Nelson gets in with all those guys and plays a Garruk. Wow.
Yeah, that's quite the turn for Brad. Clears the entire other side of the board. Still follows up with a Planeswalker. And is able to knock Michael down to 5 off of a pair of Wolves and the Voice of Resurgence. Notably, that Demon is still around, and now is he 7/7.
Yep. And so what you saw that Brad do there with his Garruk Relentless is he fights his own Spirit token to flip his Garruk Relentless into Garruk the Veiled Cursed. So now he can represent a tutor for whatever he wants to next turn. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go get Obsidian next turn, assuming that Garruk is still around. But now Rooks is in a difficult situation because that combat, as you said, went great for Brad.
Yeah.
Taking care of all of Rooks' stuff, that Tragic Slip, the Desecration Demon sacrifice, everything. And it's kind of strange, too, because with Rooks, him sacrificing that tap Beast token, it would have left him with just 1 creature for Homicidal Seclusion, so he would have been in that situation where he would have had a 6/4 lifelinking blocker, but Nelson had a Tragic Slip to take care of that.
We do see Michael with a Taskmaster in hand, so he can put a 4/3 on board that will be a 7/4 lifelinker.
Yep.
And that might get him out of this situation. As you mentioned, the Garruk over there representing a tutor. I don't know if Michael has an Abrupt Decay. That's his probably his best removal spell for a flipped Garruk.
Yeah, you see his hand right now. He's got a Deathrite Shaman. He has a Demonic Taskmaster. He has another copy of Homicidal Seclusion. And he's got a mystery card hiding in there as well.
I think it's
It's the curse. Yeah, it's the curse from earlier. So those are the 4 cards that he's staring at. Again, Deathrite Shaman, Demonic Taskmaster, Homicidal Seclusion, and that Curse of Deathhold, which he's had since the beginning of the game.
Right.
And we talked about how good Curse of Deathhold was against Brad's previous iterations of this deck. Again, if you remember that match at Grand Prix Miami of Ray Duke playing against Brad Nelson, how good Curse of Deathhold was in that matchup, you see that Brad's deck has evolved, it's changed, and Curse is just significantly worse against his deck now.
So Michael's going to go with the Taskmaster plan, but he's also playing a Deathrite Shaman, which is interesting because of the Homicidal Seclusion being deactivated due to the fact that he's got 2 creatures. Now he can sack the Deathrite Shaman to deal with the Desecration Demon. Maybe that's his plan to give this guy lifelink, but that's how he decides to go with it. Brad draws a card at end of turn with the Underworld Connections, and as Michael passes back, Brad at 14 life now. Ton of land. Ton of dudes and a Planeswalker.
And there's one important land in his hand, a one of in his deck, Gavany Township, which, you know, you could argue that Brad is kind of flooding out a little bit here, but now this is actually going to give him something to do with all that extra mana that he's going to have moving forward. I don't think we're going to see a ton more turns in this game, as the Gavany Township can certainly put things away in a pretty quick fashion, but now he's actually got things to do with all the extra mana he's had.
And I think that Gavany Township would have made that Curse of Deathhold look a little silly. Had Michael decided to go with that plan just to maybe shrink some of the guys, but yeah, that wasn't a very good plan anyway, considering his Desecration Demon was just going to kill him.
You know, it really has to set off, you know, some signals in your head if you're Rooks. That Appetite for Brains that we saw on turn number 3, you know, Brad analyzing the hand and choosing again not to take Curse of Deathhold. You know, you have to be of the mindset of, okay, like this card was insane against this deck in, you know, months prior, and he's opting not to take this, so okay, this probably isn't very good if he's choosing not to take this card. And as you can see, it's just not that good. He's going to actually sacrifice Desecration Demon to Garrick.
Yeah, this is interesting. Brad kind of seeing how Michael's trying to plan on dealing with the Desecration Demon, and he's going to go ahead and sacrifice the Demon to the Garrick to tutor up a second copy of Desecration Demon. Interesting. What do you think the logic is there?
Color me surprised.
I'm surprised too. I thought he was going for Obsidat to kind of get the guaranteed 2, and kind of grind the last few life total.
I mean, so my thought process is that he doesn't want to go to the attack step with Desecration Demon in play because he doesn't want Rooks to be able to sacrifice a creature to turn on Homicidal Seclusion. That part of it makes sense to me.